We gotta use all the time we have. And you know that we'll never say never if we ever get the chance. And it's good to be alive. It's good to be alive. This feeling's running high. Life is calling and the world is beautiful. Na, 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 na. Na, 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 There's a winding road we're choosing, looking for a brand new day. And up ahead there's an open door, now we'll find our way. There's a hope for a new tomorrow. We can dream that we'll rise above. Let me be your guide to follow, and you'll always feel the love. And it's good to be alive. It's good to be alive. This feeling's running high. Life is calling and the world is beautiful. Seize the moment and stop Play the music and live. Well, it's good to be alive. So good to be alive. This feeling's running high. Oh,
Hello, check.
life is calling and the
Hello, everybody. All right, let's do this. Woo! We made it to PinTech Live.
We're here.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Hey, Kyle.
friends and enemies alike. Welcome to our live stream.
Rawr. So, everyone, let me know if you can hear me in the chat. I am actually at Pinball Expo right now in Chicago with Stern, rocking my macho pinball hat. And I wanted to give you guys a tour of our booth area. Loud and clear? Awesome. Why aren't y'all at Pinball Expo? That's the question. Sorry,
You didn't
Kyle.
invite me. That's why
I
I'm
know.
not.
I wish you were here.
Next time,
Alright.
next year.
So I'm going to give you the grand tour, starting with our epic red carpets.
Ooh.
I'm leaving the back room area. Oh, secret, don't look over there. And here we are at the Stern booth. So we got some Stern merch right here. And there are 40 Stern games. 20 of them are Godzillas. So these are the premiums that everyone is super excited to play. And then pros. So there's 10 pros and 10 premium Godzillas here. These will also be at Midwest Gaming Classic next weekend, which we as Marco will be presenting there. So you guys get to see Kyle up on the stage doing some fun stuff. But here it's all about Jack Danger. So this is Jack Danger's stage. He's going to be doing some talk show stuff that will later go on the Stern Facebook page.
Awesome.
He's drinks with Jack, so he's going to get drunk with Gary Stern. It was supposed to be drinking beer, but Gary Stern is demanding vodka, so we know how that goes. And then these are the leaderboards. So as people play these games here in the booth, it's automatically loaded to these leaderboards, and then at the end of the show, we're gonna give prizes to like the top scores.
That's badass.
So it's pretty cool. So it all works in real time. We have some awesome carpet because there's internet lines run everywhere to these games.
Awesome.
Yeah, so besides the Godzilla, we have all the latest titles. And I organized them. So this is like the Keith Elwin pod sort of thing. And then, well, this is like George Gomez and Brian Eddy. But check this out. This is Jack Danger's new home pin game, the Jurassic Park Home Edition.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
I have Jody calling me.
So,
He's like on the stream being like, why are you doing this? I'm just doing. So yeah, Aerosmith. Oh, I gotta show you the 40th Elvira because this is beautiful. It's all in a purple cabinet and it's like holographic. I was showing Kyle earlier. Look at that shine.
so neat.
Isn't that pretty?
I'll never see one ever, except for right now.
Well, you're gonna see one at MGC next weekend because we'll have it there.
I'm gonna see it at MGC. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Andrew Barney. What's up, man?
Oh, there's Jeff Keolis.
You need to show your macho hat. That is the greatest hat ever.
Say hi to everyone on PinTech Live.
Oh,
They're watching
great
a tour.
show. PinTech Live?
Yeah.
Every Thursday? Are you kidding? I learn a lot. You guys do a great
Wow.
job. Thanks very much for doing that.
I am
Yeah,
honored.
thanks, guys. I know. See, they love you, Kyle. Oh, Randy Martinez, the legendary artist, The Mandalorian, and many others. Star Wars comic.
Hello.
He can't hear me because of my mask, but hopefully you guys can hear me all right. Oh, I think my computer died.
Yeah, it did.
This might have messed up the graphics.
No, it's good. It's just a little goofy, but we'll deal with it. It's a little zoomed in, but we're fine.
Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off, guys, because I'm here working with Stern. Kyle, I miss you. Everyone on the PinTech live chat, I miss y'all. And I'll see you next weekend.
Bye, Emoto. See you next.
Bye.
See you soon. Jeez.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck on the Squawk and Talks.
Oh boy.
All right, see ya. Bye.
Okay, I think I've got this figured out. Hold on, y'all. I'm so glad Emoto is here for a second. Now I'm extra. I have to talk a lot today. It'll be fun. That was super cool. It's neat to see that booth. It looks really incredible. I'm really sad I'm not there, but I keep forgetting that I do have to go to Milwaukee next week. So that'll be fun. I don't even know if I have plane tickets yet. Emoto, when are we leaving? What is going on? When are you going, Andrew? Are you going to head over there soon? They Squawk, will they talk? Nah, next week I'm probably going to be in Milwaukee at this time, so I will not be PinTeching. Maybe we'll show our booth that we're setting up at MG. I honestly have no idea what the travel plans are or what we're doing, so we'll find out. Hey, voice, turn up the gain on your microphone. You know what, man? Oh, wow, look at that. Hey, it might be a lot louder now. Is this too much? I was struggling a lot getting audio to work today. I think we screwed with something last week. We had a lot of audio difficulties with when we were doing the interview with George. So, this is where it should be. Yeah, all the way up. What's up? We could piss a pinball pit. Yeah, we're gonna have them soon. We ordered a bunch. I'm gonna order one for my Deadpool and my friends. Iron Maiden, and we're going to put them in our arcade. I'm sure a couple of the other arcades around here will have them too. It'll be fun to have all our stuff connected. It's really cool. Good. Okay. I'm glad that it's better. Hi, everybody. This is the Kyle Talking for 2 Hours show. I'm really sad that man, it's always funny to see Jack just because, like, I feel Emoto says we're basically the same person. We're both very tall. We're both have the same build. We both like pinball. We're both grumpy and jerks in a way, but also very loving. So, you know, I'm excited to hang out with him sometime soon. He might come to MGC. Let's work on the Squawk and Talk. Let's talk about sound in pinball for a minute. Bally had a few different soundboards. You know, obviously the first couple solid state games were chimes. Chimes are great, chimes are cool, but they figured out sounds and electronic sounds would be just as neat. It is funny, a funny note, some early pinball games, most notably Williams games, did have an option to eliminate electronic sounds and replicate them as electronic chimes, which is awfully strange. But it's pretty cool. So Bally had a few soundboards. They had like the Mega Basic board. The first Bally game with sound was Lost World. I believe that was 1978 or so. That was just a very basic, not as basic as Gottlieb's System 1 sounds with the beep, 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 boop, boop, boops, but they still were rather basic. And I think Bally had another iteration of the soundboard. I think it was called like a dash. You know, Bally's board nomenclature is AS-2581 or 2851. I'm getting dyslexic right now. And then I believe like the first soundboards were like the dash 50 and then the dash 51 or 52. They were very basic. The first one was like mega basic. The second one was used in a lot more games. My Viking has that board. It has the ability to create a good range of sound, but they were still pretty basic. Not a very high bit rate. They didn't have like mega great sampling capabilities. But then came Xenon. Xenon used a unique soundboard. It was called the Sounds Plus board. The Sounds Plus board had a good sound sampling, much higher quality sounds as well. It was very dynamic. Xenon was also the first game to have speech for Bally. The Sounds Plus board also included a board called the Vocalizer. With the Vocalizer contained all of the sounds, and the voice. In that process, that mixed it with the sound and then sent it out to the speaker. The only other game to use the Sounds Plus board and hydrate. Okay, I'm drinking some water. The only other game to use the Sounds Plus board was Flash Gordon. Very few Flash Gordons were built with the Sounds Plus and the Vocalizer. Flash Gordon was the first game to use the Squawk and Talk. I believe the Squawk and Talk was the... hold on, I've got PinWiki up here just because I can't remember all this stuff. The Squawk and Talk was a dash 61. So it kind of went chronological. Anyways, the Squawk and Talk was like the penultimate like soundboard. It was amazing. It combined everything onto one board, sound and voice. It was, you know, all done on one computer. It has some really wonderful audio and voice generators. So they are a very unique sounding board. You know, the greatest of the great Bally games all use this chipset or this board. You know, 8-Ball Deluxes and Fathoms and, you know, Vector. I mean, any of those games that talk to, they're all so recognizable, all the sounds. Anywho, it was a very expensive board. We'll see all the components on it soon. And when Bally started going into the cost-cutting era of pinball, they started using lesser soundboards. A lot of games didn't even have speech. They cut speech. There were some games that were made twice. Like 8-Ball Deluxe, for example, was made 3 times. And when they brought that game back, they obviously included the Squawk and Talk, the legendary Squawk and Talk. But other games made it at the same time, like my Kings of Steel over there, that had a board called the, and I think even my Lady Luck, I think they both have the same soundboard. It's called the Cheap Squeak. It is a much cheaper version, and it makes good sound, but it doesn't have the robustness of the Squawk and Talk. It's incredible. Anywho, let me look at the chat. Yeah, System 1 sounds are rad. So is the Stern sound. Daniel's talking about, yeah, I should switch video feeds, but I'm too far away from my stuff. Let's get the board out in a second. Actually, hold on. We'll keep talking. No, we won't. I want to get working. We've got a lot of work to do. I'm going to yank the board out while I continue talking. There is a unique board, another unique board, which is one of my favorites in Centaur. Centaur used a Squawk and Talk. It used a unique Squawk and Talk, actually, that had 2 extra pins that would allow you to hook up another board. All of the processing of sound and voice was done on the Squawk and Talk, and that was sent over to a reverb board. Bally being very clever in this era, naming their boards such as Squawk and Talk. This one, the reverb board, was called the Say It Again board, which I find super humorous. And it's really cool. They used a really unique reverb chip at that time called it was a SAD49. I was actually introduced to this when I was building guitar pedals before I did pinball full time, but the SAD49 chip was used in a lot of 80s reverb pedals that are super famous, and they're just very, very difficult to find now, almost impossible. So there are a few chips now that are boards that replicate the SAD49, so you can repair those original Centaur boards. So yeah, sorry, the computer's all the way over here, and Emoto is usually the one switching all the video. So instead of getting up and moving, we're just gonna work here. Apparently the Squawk and Talk use the Speak and Spell same chip. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense, huh? Let's identify the audio chips here. So this is a computer, and actually, you know what? I kind of want to put this in. We had nothing. Let's talk about where we were at with this and what we're going to do with it before we keep talking about nerdy stuff. This is a computer. This board, let me remember some of this stuff. I think it takes it does take 12 volts, and it creates its own 5 volts, if I remember correctly. It also requires a negative 5 volts. So it has its own rectifier. I believe it has like a half-wave rectifier somewhere. And one thing I learned, which was frustrating, but a game that has dead GI, general illumination, will not work. This board actually takes the 6.5 whatever volts AC, which then is rectified and turned into -5 on this regulator here. So a game that has no a blown GI fuse or no GI fuse will also have no Squawk and Talk. When this was in the game, there is a diagnostic LED, which is here. It was not flashing at all. There's a few things that can cause this, and I kind of want to do this step by step, but unfortunately I don't have my solder sucker, so I have to unpump, I have to manually remove all these capacitors with a solder sucker, not the electronic desoldering gun, so it will take a little bit more time. But I wanted to go step by step, and I wanted to, let's troubleshoot it in order. Let's check and see if we have 5 volts first. One common thing, which can happen, we can have cracked solder on the 5 volt regulator, which is, sorry, I'm trying to, oh, it's this camera? Oh, weird. I thought we were using another camera. Let me switch cameras. Hold on, sorry. I'm so sad Emoto's not here, and then I'm also sad that I'm not at Expo, but let's see. On camera. Wait, no, I want to do that, and then I want to do that, and then I want to do that? No, I don't want to do that. Which one? Oh yeah, no, that is it. Right? Nope. Okay, well, I guess we have one camera. I thought we were gonna, wait, no, we do. What is going on here? Okay, well, I thought I had it set up right, but we don't. I'm sorry. This camera will be fine. The 5 volt regulator, I have seen this a few times. There can be cracked solder here. These are the 2 points forward that the regulator comes through the board. If these are cracked, obviously you won't have 5 volts. Let's put this back in the game. I'll carry this camera over and we will measure. I have nothing on the diagnostic LED. So, what that tells me is maybe we have cracked voltages coming in. Also, most of the time on these boards, in my experience at least, capacitors. Bad capacitors can cause all sorts of goofy things to happen and not boot up. Although, like I said, we do have that diagnostic LED, and it does do something similar to how the Bally computers actually work. So I'm pulling up on PinWiki right now, the LED first flickers. So if we get a flicker, right, if we turn power on and that light just kind of comes on and off really quick, like a Bally computer will, the first flicker shows that the processor has found the program's code in the ROM and has begun to do its job. The fact that we don't have a single flicker at all tells me that like the computer is not running. And what are we going to do to start trying to figure out why the computer isn't running? Well, we need to make sure it has voltage. So let me look at the chat again. This is nerdy stuff. Oh, yeah, the little code thing isn't working right now, the video like ticker. So the code is PT-squawky talky. I am going to get the spelling of that, I'm going to copy and paste it and get it into chat right now just because I don't want to have to sit here and spell it. Give me a second. Hold on. Sorry. I can chat here. So it's PT-SQUAWKIETALKIE. Bam. Okay. PT squawky talky. We spent all of 3 seconds trying to figure out what our code was going to be, and I liked that one, so that's what we went with. Okay, I'm going to put this back up here. Let's look in the back box where the Squawk and Talk goes. I'm going to mount it. And let's measure and see what we've got first. And we'll see if we can learn something. Because I have zero patience. I don't usually try to really figure out where the issue is. I just do the normal shotgunny bits. But let's first figure out where we have voltage and where we don't have voltage. I put it in upside down, as I'm sure a lot of people are being like, hey, dummy, you put it in upside down. Hold on. There. These clips are a pain. Another thing with this board being semi-problematic, and albeit sound is difficult to troubleshoot, I very much dislike actually troubleshooting sound issues because there's a lot of, you know, things that are not physical going on, right? We've got to bust out our scope and figure out where signals come and go. It is easier just to replace boards, and you know, maybe if a game was not performing well, someone would yank a board out and throw a different Squawk and Talk into another game. There are different sized ROMs, and there are many jumpers here to configure these ROMs. So you do need to make sure, yeah, that is something that you do want to verify at some point if you are having a lot of trouble starting from scratch. This is the original board. I can tell this is the original board because of this sticker here. In the corner we have EVE1514. All of the boards here have that same sticker. That is, every board has the game that it came in and its serial number stamped in them from the factory. EVE stands for electronic vector. They eventually, soon after this, they ditched the electronic portion of it because all of their games were electronic at this point. But okay. Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. Okay, so we have a locked on LED right now. That's different than what it was doing before. That tells me maybe there is some cracked solder somewhere, potentially. But we're definitely going to go through and do the capacitors today. So let's figure out here. I don't have the manual in front of me, but thankfully I have PinWiki here. So I am going to very quickly look up the test points. When one of these things is locked on, sometimes that could be indicative of a bad chip. And there are only a certain amount of chips that you need to run this board. Actually, I'm going to go grab the manual. It'll be easier to find in here. So one trick I have learned from old timers, and I don't know 100%, but you end up removing, to get to the minimum amount of chips required for this thing to boot up, which is basically, RAM, processor, etc. MPU schematic, 7-digit schematic, Squawk and Talk schematic. I'll show what I'm looking at here in just a second. J1 pin 10 is where or test point 3 is where we're going to have our unregulated 12 volts, which comes from the rectifier board down below, which we worked on a couple weeks ago. So test point 3 should have around 12. Test point 2 should have 5. So let's go there first. I'm looking at the schematic. This is the plug. Sorry, the contrast would be all weird. This is the plug of all the, the big plug on the bottom. That's voltages coming in. At the top here, this is very small. It's even hard for me to read, let alone you guys won't be able to see it. But I can see on this line, test point 3 is supposed to have our unregulated 12. So let's grab the meter here. Let's find test point 3. It's right here. I have 13.38 volts there. That's good. That's unregulated 12, which means it does not have to be 12. And then test point 2, we should have 5. That'll probably be somewhere near the regulator, but not necessarily. Let's look around. There's test point 4, test point 11. Where else could I measure for that, since the test point is elusive? Test point 12, test point 10. The test points are these little loops that come off the board. There's 7, there's unidentifiable. We can measure for 5 volts at a chip, but let's see. I can measure it on C16. Is C16 easy to find? There's C15, C16, the positive side of C16 right here. I don't have 5 volts. Let's double check, and we're gonna very carefully measure for 5 volts on some of these chips. They're different in every chip, but generally your 5 volts is gonna be on one of the top corners of these bigger chips, either, pin 1 or pin 40. Maybe it's gonna be pin 20. I do have 5 volts there. Okay. We might have a bad chip. There's a few things we're going to want to do to address this, but we definitely want to replace all the capacitors, because even if we do have it working, it might still be muddy, nasty. Let me chill out a second and not keep talking so fast. And we'll start doing some work. Sometimes, just instead of jumping to conclusions, sometimes doing the preliminary work, though, will get these things working. But one thing that is common on these Bally boards is you'll have I don't know what the phenomena is called, but when you have two metal surfaces of unlikeness, they can cause corrosion and buildup and gunk. So one thing you'll definitely want to do with these boards as well is I like to remove all the chips and then reseat them. Sometimes removing the chips and reseating them makes the connectivity that much better. Anyways, back to the chat. I'm sorry. What issues are worse to fix? Sound issues or speech issues? Both. They both suck. Yeah, sound issues can definitely be a rabbit hole. They're very annoying. I'm not the greatest at solving these things, but again, the procedural things can really solve a lot of these issues. So let's see. I'm going to grab magnification because I'm definitely going to want to see all of our solder points. So here is our big connector where juice comes in at. Use my magnification here, and they all look okay, but just because we have it out, we will mess with that. Really quick, let's start removing some chips. And we will see if we can find anything that's tarnished and nasty. So let's see, I'll get this camera in position. Here's your processor, a Motorola 6808. We're very gently going to try to pry this out. I don't want to pry on another chip. That's bad form. What we try to do is we'll try to get our screwdriver in here, and we will try to get a foothold, and then you can kind of rotate gently to start to lift. Only do this if you are confident in your abilities to do this. If you need me to instruct you on how to remove a chip, it might not be the best idea to remove said chips. Be very careful, be very gentle. Thankfully, most of the really critical chips on this board are socketed. So if we did have a crazy problem, we can start replacing these chips to try and, replacing the socketed chips to see if one of these may have an issue. Don't have any nasty legs on the processor, thankfully. We will reinstall said processor. Actually, I'll keep it out because it's going to be easier to get this PIA out. These Motorola chips don't generally have the nasty tarnishing. On this game, I definitely noticed that I think the AY38912 is a sound generator, and I think the TMS, this chip over here, this Texas Instruments chip, is the speech chip. The TMS chip usually has some of that nasty corrosion. And again, I'm not going to read into the locked on LED thing too hard yet. Again, what we learned was the first flicker is supposed to be the processor recognizing everything in the ROM and getting ready to start the program. But let's just do the work that we normally would do and then see where we get. This might be a multi-part episode. We'll find out. This does not want to go in. Verify all legs are in place before reseating. I do see that this TMS chip does have some crud on the legs, so I will take that one out. I definitely wanted to check the processor and some of the PIAs first. The ROM chips look good. Those look okay. Those look okay. And we can't just go on looks. We do need to remove them at some point. But I think for the sake of this episode, let's work on replacing capacitors first and see where we get. I am going to try to remove the TMS, the Texas Instruments chip here. Be very careful when you're messing with these guys. They are hen's teeth. Rare like hen's teeth. I am kind of using another chip as leverage. That's bad, but unfortunately, space constraints say I need to do that. Again, try to rotate. Let me show you the tarnishing that I was talking about, just so you can kind of spot this. I can see it from a mile away when looking at the chip in the socket. You see the legs? Emoto's not here to focus the camera, but you can very clearly see a super shiny spot where the leg of the chip lives in the socket and that black schmutz on top. Sometimes that black schmutz goes all over. While we have this lovely important chip out, I'm going to bust out my fiberglass brush, and we're just going to quickly remove some of that oxidation. And I think that is just from the phenomena of two unalike metals being together and conducting electricity, etc. This makes really quick work of nasty crud. I'll just do a quick sideways sweep here. If you notice, generally a good electronics engineer will lay out all the chips on the board to kind of lay the same way. You notice that the notches are all pointing this way. That way, when I go back to reinstall this chip, I know to install it with that notch facing this way. That is not always true, so definitely, keep an eye out for that. Verifying all the legs are where they should be. They are. Seat that guy back in. Now, that being said, even though these were clean, just removing this could have knocked some crud away, and maybe we'll get the game working again. That is why sometimes when you see people working on games, sometimes the first thing they'll do on an unknown game is push on the chips, and sometimes that will seat them just ever so slightly, and you will get better connectivity. Okay, there's a lot of capacitors on this board. This is a 40, hold on, let's go back to the chat. Kyle needs a chip puller. I have one, I just don't like to get it out of my toolbox because I am lazy. PIA stands for pain in the beep to replace. Yes. Pink eraser, yeah, Colin says pink eraser is good for cleaning up tarnish. It absolutely is. Colin, yes, I was using a fiberglass brush. I would not put that in my teeth. You get out of here. Okay, I'm going to bust out this teeny solder sucker that I have in here. There is a lot of capacitors on this board. When I do capacitors, since I am forgetful, I do like to do them one at a time. I'm going to start at the top of the board. I think this is a good time where we can just, hang out, ask questions, etc. while I'm working through this, and we'll see what we can get. But this is a fun board to do. You do need to be very, 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 you need to pay attention to the polarity of these capacitors because there are like 7 1 microfarad capacitors on this board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And they all face different ways. The polarity on these ones is going positive is this way. The polarity on these ones, positive is going this way. But then this one right here, the polarity is going this way. That is why I like to do them one at a time. Thankfully, these boards are marked. Sometimes it is difficult to figure out, if there's a positive or do they both share the same positive. So, slow and steady definitely wins the race. You're not racing anybody. So I shouldn't even use that metaphor, but I did. We're going to do this the way that I like for speed. We will heat up the end and we will remove the component and then we will suck the hole clean. That will make it easier and quicker. Just since I don't have my solder sucker, or we don't have the the desoldering iron. This capacitor kit, I got from Marco. We have a kit to replace all the electrolytic capacitors on this board. My microphone is rubbing up against my neck. Let's move that. Are any of y'all going to Pinball Expo? Or MGC? Midwest Gaming Classic? Okay, so the first capacitor is a 47 microfarad at 16 volts. We're going to replace it with a 47 at 25. This is okay. It is okay and acceptable to replace a capacitor with something rated for a higher voltage. Back in the day, electronics were still, they were, a little expensive to produce. And what we're looking at here is just the ability to have a better tolerance in manufacturing. Let's look at a capacitor, even though this camera doesn't focus super great. Rule of thumb, this is an axial capacitor. The leads come out each side, like an axle. The positive side generally is denoted of 2 ways. You've got an indentation, or kind of a low spot on the positive side, and generally they are marked with the wrapper showing a negative facing the direction which is the negative side. If you install an electrolytic capacitor backwards, it will pop and make electric smoke, or a magical smoke, and it's not fun. So be very careful when you're installing these, get them the correct way. anyways, what I was getting at was the 16 volts. It might have been a lot cheaper to get a capacitor made at 16 volts than it was to buy one higher rated. Now, whatever this is, capacitizing, it definitely wasn't over 16 volts. So you could use that. But nowadays, it's not, they don't need to make a billion different, varieties of a capacitor. They can make a 25 volt capacitor in the same footprint as those old 16s. Long story short, that number is basically your ceiling, right? That is how good that's what it's good up until. So in this case, since this circuit doesn't exceed 10 volts, a 25 volt capacitor will be absolutely fine. The capacitance in microfarads is what you need to be a little bit more, you do need to pay more attention to. In some applications you can go up, in some you cannot. I think we're going to do a roundabout. I'm going to move down to these guys here. So we've got 1,000 microfarads at 16. Let's yank that guy out. MGC for the win. Yeah, I'm excited to see you there, man. Both. Fun. Have a good time out there. Brett Seats asks about Soda City Comic Con. Marco won't be there, but a lot of our employees will be there bringing games. I'm not bringing any of my games because I am kind of lazy about moving stuff, but I will be there to fix things if they break. That will be fun. Unfortunately, I also have service this weekend, so I can't actually go unless something really does break. But, Colin's going to his basement. Well, that sounds antisocial. Come on, you're close to Illinois. Just drive. You'll have fun. You'll get to play fancy Elvira. Actually, you should come to MGC. If you don't, you'll no longer have the friend of the show moniker, so challenge. Ice-Skidoo brings up something about fuses. There is a half-truth there. Again, fuses, at the same time, that tolerance, you'll notice if you look in your Bally manual, it might say a 3 amp 50 volt fuse or 3 amp 100 volt fuse. Again, in that statement, the voltage still doesn't matter. That is just the maximum. That fuse is rated to be good for 3 amps up until 50 volts. Nowadays, right? I mean, basically every fuse you get is going to be suitable up until about 250 volts. So we do get that question a lot from customers. Here's our 1000 microfarad at 16 volts. Negative is this way. The board is marked with our polarity positive facing this direction, so I will install it as so. I think just rule of thumb, try to get what you can, but definitely remember, or try to get it as close as possible. But at the end of the day, the 70s and 80s electronics definitely are old now. Voltages can vary. Sorry, I'm getting lost in the chat now. Nolan got a Deadpool 20 hours. That's insane. We will not be at Pintastic either. This year, we didn't plan on going to any shows because we had no idea what course the pandemic and if any of these shows would even be going on would be. So we didn't really plan on it. We have done a few shows that are either local or ones that we had very good relationships with the showrunners, and we kind of made something work. But these shows have also been a bit smaller than our usual fanfare and what we do. I would really like to go to Pintastic, and I'd really like to figure out how Emoto and I might be able to travel to some of these smaller shows, because that sounds like a lot of fun. 1000 microfarads is not that big of a capacitor in the scheme of things. I mean, it is. But in a lot of power supplies on pinball games, we'll be using 15,000 or 16,000 microfarad capacitors, which are really big honkers. Okay, C29. Let's get this guy out. Yes, he mentioned, yeah, the amperage is something you can't mess with. Just try to get electronics as close as you can to what's recommended, and consult a professional if you need to maybe bend the rules or what you're going to put in. Yeah, that broke. You were listening. Subscriptions, thank you. Wow, you guys are talking way too fast. I want to go to Pintastic. I like Yankees. I want to go to Pintastic. It sounds like a great show. We just tend to go to shows that are, I don't know. There just hasn't been a bunch of really big shows up in the Northeast. And, you know, as fun as it sounds like traveling all over the country, going to pinball shows, etc., it is a ton of work. And logistically, it is, other than getting there to meet customers and, you know, hang out with our pinball friends and bring all the games, it is a very expensive thing to do. So, you know, again, we had to pull back just a little this year. C29 was a 470. Wait, oh, I can't read this one. Wow. Okay, this is an annoying capacitor. It's actually, it says 470. I'm pretty sure there is a 470 microfarad capacitor on this board, but this capacitor itself actually is not labeled very well. Sprague plus 500D 470 6DC. Maybe this is a 470 microfarad capacitor at 6 volts. We are going to replace it with a 470 microfarad capacitor at 16 volts. Yes, you can measure capacitors to check their old capacitance, but there is a phenomena of, even though the capacitance is semi-correct, you know, the magic that is inside of electrolytic capacitor has dried up and it is not good anymore. Even though the capacitance might be okay, you know, you need a maybe a analog meter or an oscilloscope to see and look for the, what do they call it? The ripple that might be coming through that capacitor. It might be, again, the capacitance may be right, but the function of it in the circuit is not good. Just as a rule of thumb, and I don't like blanket statements, all 40-year-old electrolytic capacitors are bad and should be replaced. I should have come to VFW. Unfortunately, I ain't a playboy. I can't get on airplanes and just fly all over the country. If someone wants to bankroll the Kyle being a playboy fund, we can talk about it, but I ain't. Another thing I like to do when installing electrolytic capacitors on boards is, oh no. Oh, that was an awful failure. Okay, so this is scary. A little bit too much pressure on this. Let me show you what happened. When I was pulling this capacitor, the leg decided to pull out. It also took the fillet with it and a little bit of the trace. Is this visible? Okay, so I think I'll change my method going forward. As boards get older, I did that pretty sloppy. I'm going to blame that one on myself 100%. But you shouldn't be using manual tools when working on circuit boards. I should be doing this with a desoldering iron. It is very gentle. It does not rely on, you know, brute force, etc. As I move forward, I will be cutting the leads of these capacitors, removing the capacitor, and then pulling the stumps out and trying to saving time and remove them all at one time. This isn't bad. The trace isn't broken. I can reset seat the fillet into the board. I might want to see, just really pay attention 100% where that goes, and maybe run a jumper of sorts, but here's a lesson. be extra careful even if you don't think you have to be, and also pay attention. I'm talking, and I think I'm spending a little bit more time talking than I should be, and I am making mistakes. So I'm going to see if I can extract this and get it back in place. The fillet, again, being the part of the board that has conductive material going through the board. So from the solder side up to the top side, since this is a double-sided board, which is why you saw me lift a trace on the front side. Actually, what happened is the lead on the capacitor actually broke. So again, I should have been doing that better. I could have been doing that better, but yeah. First time chat. Yes, listen to that chat from... I cannot read your name, I'm sorry. My eyesight is going bad. It is much cheaper and more cost-effective to shotgun the board. That is the truth, and that is why we are doing this. So, I'm going to spend a second here with my quiet voice on trying to figure out what's going on here. Okay, so I did break the trace now. It is separate from the fillet. So now we've got a problem. This is annoying. It is of my own doing, but I can fix it. I don't like working on the top side of the board, but I'm really going to try to save this fillet inside the board. Okay, that might not be possible. Let's see, where does that trace go to? Travels quite some way. Looks like it goes to R54. I'm going to see if I can prove that correct. What I might need to do is, unfortunately, run a really lame patch wire. I was waiting for me to like screw up really bad on camera one day because I was talking and not paying attention to what I was doing. It goes up this way, R54. Yeah. That is where that trace goes to. So, creating more work for myself. And I ruined this perfectly good, gorgeous Squawk and Talk. This is a 2 microfarad at 25 volts. Let me find that capacitor here, and then I will try to come up with an attack plan. I think the 2 microfarad capacitors are being substituted for 2.2 microfarad capacitors, so that is what we will install. Quickly here, I will remove the other side of the capacitor that I removed, which is about here. Crap happens. Yes. Yeah, that's what I do most of the time. Again, I could replace these capacitors one by one trying to find the one that is bad, but that's a waste of time and you really don't learn anything. We know that old capacitors are bad. We know that we should replace them, and that is what we are going to do. It is fun to learn sometimes, but again, it's like we're not really learning much when we know that, you know, old electrolytic capacitors are just bad. You know, I did not bring my parts box in here, and I do need to go get some of my, what I use is patch wire. Give me a sec. I'm just going to run outside to my car, which is just outside the door. Thankfully, it is not pouring rain like it was an hour ago. Let me grab. Ugh. Oh, I'd done a bad thing. I feel like I need to give myself some lashes for doing something so bad. Not sure what I'm going to do with that trace. I might, let's see. It is not good to have like a errant trace just sitting on top of the board. What I'm going to try to do is make sure it's flat. And I'm going to try to, it's twisted. I'm going to try to peel off some of the coating on the foil. What we're going to try to do is when I apply solder to the back of this capacitor, we're going to see if I can just ever so slightly overflow it and get it to touch that trace. And then what we are going to do is run a redundancy patch wire to try and or just ensure that we have a solid connection. I broke a rule here. I definitely try to install all capacitors, if possible, with their ratings facing upward. I don't know why. It just looks better. So very quickly here, I'm going to tap the one with a good pad and fill it in. Got water on my glasses. And I'll get back to you, chat. I'm sorry. Come on. What I'm doing is just getting a teeny bit of solder on my iron. I'm going to hold it to the pad on the good side here. Just tack it in. What we're going to try to do is I'm going to try to solder on the top side. This is sloppy. It should work, but I will run the patch wire. I'm not going to rely on that. It is compromised. I'll try to see if I can get a shot of what I've done once I've done it. But since there's no pad and no fillet for this to stick to, it's just you're trying to get lucky here. Thanks, David. I know I do. That's what I try. I definitely try to do. I'm not scared of making mistakes anymore because the only way to learn is to make mistakes. And if people don't make mistakes, you'll never learn. There's no such thing as perfect. You know, again, my mentor, the guy who taught me everything I know, it was always humbling to see him make a mistake because, again, everyone makes mistakes. It's impossible to not make a mistake. And then, you know, what separates the good from the bad is being able to learn and overcome the mistake. So this is called Kynar wire. It has a insulated surface, and it is a very thin wire. I use this to run patches on like low voltage stuff like this. So I'm going to come in here and try to, I heat it up. I expose the fine metal end. You can kind of see that there, right? Try to expose just a teeny bit more. My goal will eventually be to try to get this Kynar wire. It's very thin, and I just cut it all off like a big dummy. Try to stick that up into the hole just a teeny bit. I shouldn't be using flush cutters for this, but this is my dullest pair. We're going to try to get the actual bare metal wire up into that hole a teeny bit, and then we're going to stretch it nice and tight until we can find where R54, where we're going to try to match that pad up so we have a good connection. So, again, I apologize for going quiet, but I'm going to Try to utilize some concentration here. And kind of wrap it around the leg of the capacitor here. Grab my solder. I'm going to clean the tip, tin it. Add solder to that joint. I hate not having a pad here. It just makes it very hard to anchor anything. I feel really dumb, but you know, it happens. I'm gonna cut, this stuff's really expensive, but I'm gonna bring it out longer than not, just in case I goof up and cut the end off again when I'm trying to strip it. I feel like I just disrespected this poor Squawk and Talk, you know? This looks a little hoodwink up here, but whatever. Let's see. Add just a teeny bit of solder on the top side since we're missing a fillet and a pad. Again, it doesn't want to flow from the bottom to the top. Gentle, a little bit. Okay. So, let's do this. I don't want to rely on this. The reason we're running a patch, even though I have the trace, which was unfortunately damaged, tied to this capacitor, I don't trust it since it has lifted off the board a teeny bit. I'm going to attach one lead to R54, one to the lead of the cap. It would help if my meter was on. I put it on in diode mode so I can hear a noise that I was waiting for and didn't get. We have connectivity there. But again, we're going to make a real foolproof, let's not screw this up, trace. Colin says hydrate. Yeah, this isn't beer, this is bubbly water, but what is that wire called? I think it's a trade name. It's called Kynar, K-Y-N-A-R. It's like 38 or 40 gauge wire. It's insanely small. Now the challenge is to figure out where that resistor is. What I like to do when I'm looking at the map of a board, when I'm trying to find these things, is look for unique features. So this resistor is in the first row. When we start looking here, we've got row, 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 so it's here. R54 is 3 components down. So it is, we've got a capacitor that has a wide footprint. We've got resistor and then another resistor. That is the one we're looking for. So if I flip this over, we've got capacitor, wide footprint, resistor, resistor. I'm going to assume. So we can double check this by popping our meter. We're going to try measuring here to here, and we have connectivity from the trace up top. I'm going to scribe this really quick so I don't have to keep, so I don't triple, quadruple guess myself. I'm just going to put a little mark next to that pad. I'm going to try to run this wire nice and tight. We're going to get it to attach here. I'm used to this stuff just kind of, I wasted a ton, but whatever. I'm used to this stuff just kind of melting. The insulation just sorts of melts when you rub up against it, and it kind of does. I was just using a weird part of the iron. Let's make sure we get the insulation off the backside too. This makes your soldering iron dirty, so be careful. Or just make sure you clean it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of fresh solder on top of this machine solder, 40-year-old solder. And I'm going to stretch this nice over this, and I'm going to press down, get it all to melt, and get it to melt into that pad. And that is a basic way to repair a trace. If I was not being so fast and paying more attention, I wouldn't have had to do that. But that's what we do for television. So there we go. We've repaired that trace. I still feel dumb, but, you know, can't win them all. Quadruple insure. The way I could tell was I did just follow where the trace on the top side of the board came and went from. Honestly, I should double check inside of a schematic, but I'm pretty sure we have this right. So, oh, let's see. I'm going to stand over by the schematic really quick and see if I can find it in 5 seconds. If not, I'm just going to get back to working here. C43 and R54. This schematic is just so complicated. R54, C43, positive side. The positive side of C43 goes to the positive side of C36, which then connects to R54. So we done did a good job. I didn't just create a massive short, which would cause me bazillions of headaches. Where's C36? It's the other 2 microfarad capacitor. There's one. There's C36. So I should also have some juice from here to here to here. Okay, I'm happy. Hey, someone found the Kynar. All right. Thank you for the kind words, Pinball Gramps. What does it taste like? I don't know. I'm not going to taste it for you this time. I apologize. I'll probably get some sort of awful disease if I did. I guess now we'll start working this way. So again, we're going to do this the real safe way. We're going to snip the ends of the leads here. This is a 1 microfarad capacitor. Again, the polarity is marked, so I'm not super nervous. Once we've clipped the leads, I'll usually just gently grab them with like my dullest flush cutters. The flush cutters do act as a bit of a, sorry, one sec. The flush cutters do act as a, like a heat sink, so it will take a second for the actual pad to warm up enough to yank the lead out. There it goes. I think we've done this before, like when we were working on Scanby sockets, those evil sockets on the Williams computers. Sorry, I was lifting the board up to do that. Those things are very delicate, and a lot of times those boards have remnants of acid damage still. So we would remove the physical housing of the socket, and then we would gently remove each pin. Because again, when we're working on this stuff, there are very small traces, very fine traces, and like you saw, it is not very difficult to damage them. The pad on the other side of that trace was very fat, and it takes a long time to heat those up. So I added a little bit of fresh solder to quick the process up. So this was a 10 microfarad capacitor at 16 volts. I'm going to go over here to my kit. Here's a 10 microfarad capacitor at 50 volts. That is a massive jump, but it is a lot cheaper to buy a 50 volt capacitor now because it's more common than one rated for 16 volts. It'll do the exact same job. Make sure we have our polarity correct. We'll install this guy here. How are you guys doing? I'm reverting back to my radio days and just filling all dead air with jibber jabber. I had a lot of fun talking to George Gomez. I felt bad because we were kind of working through some camera and audio things, and you know, I was on camera and talking with headphones on, and Emoto was like doing sign language to me, and I was like, I don't know, so I'm just gonna keep talking. But it was great getting, like, you know, the artist's inside scoop on, you know, his ideas and inspiration for that platform. All right, we'll work on this trio of 1 microfarad capacitors up here. Ooh, that's right in the danger zone, right where I made my fatal mistake. Sometimes, if you can't find a component on a board, sometimes you can take it and hold it up to the light. And sometimes you can see a faint outline of what you are trying to remove, and that makes it a lot easier than doing the flip-flop, flip-flop, flip-flop. Oh, I forgot also, we are going to do this DEF CON safety method now. I'm going to use my flush cutters to hold on and put just ever so little tension on it. Heat up the backside, remove the stub, and that is the safest way to remove this. I think since I can get a better grasp on this, I won't cut both sides. I will hold the capacitor and do the same thing. Heat it up, make sure it's very melted, and then pull it out. I think my issue with the last one was, you know, the capacitor kind of broke, but I also, maybe I was putting a little bit too much pressure on it while the actual pool of solder that, you know, holds it into the board wasn't 100% melted yet. So that is one of the skill sets of learning how to work on boards, is being comfortable with holding the iron on the board as long as necessary. And again, that is why I generally will work on these things with the heat cranked high. The less amount of time I need to keep my soldering iron on the board, the better. So I will run it at, like, I have it set to 750 right now. A lot of times I'll work on boards at maybe around 800 degrees, and that'll allow me to spend a little bit less time, you know, contact with the board. All right. We'll do the same thing here, and then I'll look at chat. Since all of these capacitors are the same value, I will be removing this trio as a unit, and then I'll go in and solder them in together. Making sure it started to move, but I'm going to keep heat on the board and then remove. And, you know, I feel bad because I've kind of dropped this, but I did enjoy kind of like assigning a quote-unquote difficulty level to each of these jobs. Soldering capacitors to a circuit board is generally pretty easy. This is a very complicated and rather delicate board. There's a lot going on here, a lot of components really close to each other. I would say that, you know, even though in the scheme of board working, right, soldering in new capacitors is relatively simple if you have the skill set. You know, I'd say, you know, normally that would be like a 1, right? It is one of the simplest things you can do. This entire process is a little bit more delicate, and I would say this is like a, you know, 2.5 or 3 out of 5. So, you know, at your own risk. It's not very difficult, just go slow, and you won't make the same mistakes I did. There we go. Soldering is definitely something that does take like all of your senses too, other than taste. Don't taste. Sight, feel. I can see the solder melting. I can watch the component starting to move. I can feel it becoming loose and allowing me to remove it from the board safely instead of forcing it. Keeping it on there a little longer than you think so.
and then hitting it to remove all of the solder. It's melted. Give it a little bit longer to make sure it melts through the top. Suck. Get a nice clean through hole. See it melted. A little bit longer. Hit it. That is danger close to the wire that I patched in there, so I will need to be careful I do not create an unintentional short there. Aw, Retro Gaming with Hopper is doing just peachy. I'm glad you are. Have you ever taken an old capacitor and squished one with pliers out of curiosity? No, but I have seen them explode when I've installed them backwards, so. It's funny when they pop. I accidentally, and again, polarity. Let's do a polarity check just because I want to keep talking about what we're working on. I'm holding the board upside down, but 3 capacitors missing, plus, plus, plus. That is where the positive side of our 1 microfarad capacitors will go. I installed a filter capacitor on my friend's Gorgar power supply backwards. I powered it on once. Hey, that looks okay. And I was about to yank it out to give it back to him so he could go put it in his game. And I thought, you know what? Let me power it back on because I want to make sure, I just want to measure the outputs. Let's just make sure the voltages are okay. It's working, but let's make sure. And it, you know, it was able to stay on for about 20 seconds, but then when I powered it on the next time, you just heard, you know, poops, and all the magical smoke came out of that big capacitor, and it was gross. And stinky. They're very stinky. Fold these down this way. Let's see what we can get. Get that guy in there. And I'll fold these out just a teeny bit, and then I will fold them back before I solder them, just because it does make it way more difficult for the next guy to remove those capacitors if the leads are really flayed out. If you must taste your solder, best go lead-free. Yeah. We've got a lot of years now, collectively as humanity, learning about how bad lead is for you. Okay. I have one I need to be extra careful about, so I'll do that one last. Get in here and go through the motions. If I had more time today, if I didn't have to be at the office and do my actual job, I would have kind of gotten a head start on this so we could try to power it up and see what's going on. But we are going along swimmingly, and it is, what time is it? The camera is blocking. Oh my gosh, it's 4:30 almost. We might not even be able to power this thing up. Oh, that's going to be a cliffhanger. That sucks. I have to get home today. I have plans and chores. Now I'm all stressed out because I have to fly to Milwaukee next weekend. Got a lot of stuff to do. All right, snip, snip. Snip, snip, snip. And I'm going to push the Kynar wire out of the way just a teeny bit. I'll probably have to do this with like, how am I going to do this? I need a third hand. No. Don't breathe it. Okay. Inspect the top side. We have just a little bit of pass through on the top, which is good. Okay. You know, I think the other thing too is, for as much as when I was learning, the goal was definitely to get things done in a timely manner because, you know, I was being paid, we were charging the customer, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, I never was forced to go fast. You make mistakes when you try to rush, even the best of us. it's no dig against him, but Chris, the smartest guy in the world, a little impatient sometimes. And sometimes when, he would get impatient and he would start rushing things, that's when I would really notice he would start making more and more mistakes. And, I think that's kind of normal in life. The more you rush, the more issues you might have with things. But I also feel like I might be rushing since I'm trying to get this done in 2 hours, and that's dumb. I should just chill out. You guys aren't going to be mad at me if we don't power this up today, will you? Here's where the pitchforks start coming into the chat, huh? Okay, there was C28. Where's that? Okay. Heat it up, suck it out. Heat it up, suck it out. That didn't work. We're going to add a little bit of solder to try to encourage it to melt more.
David, Mike McKenna. I have a Squawk and Talk that locks up unless I power cycle a bunch of times. I've swapped all socketed components with known good, replaced the header connector, still no luck. You said something else up here, Sue, sorry. Maybe a little too far, but there. Yes. Yeah, the shaping tools are great. It really makes the work come out a lot better. Mike McKenna was mentioning actual tools that you will bend the leads of your components over to create the perfect 90-degree bends and really make everything look factory perfect. Your goal when you're doing this stuff is to kind of hopefully make it look like nobody has been here and done this before. That is the goal. Sometimes, we're not perfect and sometimes we can't do things perfect, but using that tool really does help you achieve that factory perfect look. I do have one. It is just at my house in a box somewhere where most of my bench setup is, but they are handy. And then David mentioned, a grumpy EM doctor did say, in retrospect, would it have been better to run the Kynar wire a bit longer and bend it to avoid overlapping most solder points? I think yes and no. I mean, honestly, I would ask Chris what he would do, but the way I was taught is you should try to keep it as tight as possible. We want to keep it as tight as possible so it doesn't sag or have the opportunity to hit anything else. The wire is here. In retrospect, it would have made more sense for me to potentially replace everything and then run the patch. I think since I was anxious and felt dumb for creating extra work for myself, I kind of jumped into it and was like, oh, I want to fix it now because I'm thinking about it and I just want to get it done. Which again, in retrospect, rushing is not ideal. It is not good. At the end of the day, again, we just need to make sure, you definitely want to make sure that, it is not compromised in any way. Thankfully, the insulation is not really hard it's pretty difficult to get it to come off. So I'm not worried that I have created a potential short there. But let's check. Let's make sure, because assumptions are not truths. There is no connectivity between the point where I soldered that capacitor on and what we were connecting. So I was about to say, it's like, well, crap, if it's in the same circuit, then I didn't really prove anything, but thankfully they aren't. Let's get this guy here. These are, again, all of the 1 microfarad capacitors. Mike McKenna linked to one of those things. That's great. Pinball Gramps asked if I will leave that patch wire connected.
Yes, I will. That is redundant. I did prove that I, just messing with that trace and attaching it to the capacitor did create a connection in the circuit, but I don't want to rely on that because the circuit was, I need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't want to rely on that since the trace was compromised to begin with. So that will ensure that trace being loose will never cause an issue. But I forgot, I didn't 100% finish answering that question for Mike McKenna in the chat. If you feel like you need to power cycle it a bunch and you have done that work, I didn't see that you had replaced the capacitors. Have you replaced the electrolytic capacitors on this board? A lot of times just shotgunning and replacing all of the electrolytic capacitors will fix a lot of odd issues with soundboards. Get that nice and toasty and suck it out. Nice and toasty. And suck it out. Yeah, that's a good idea. Dropping a little bit of silicone or hot glue or something to keep them in place if you do need to run a particularly long stretch. That's a great tip. I'm glad, again, I can't, hold on. Mike said he has. That was step 1. Huh. I mean, does everything else on the game work correctly? Do you have, have you replaced, I'm assuming you've also rebuilt the power supply, etc. For the rest of the game? I don't think anything else comes from here. I'm pretty sure the unregulated 12 volts comes straight from the rectifier board on this game. I don't believe it passes through the filter capacitor on the rectifier board. I'm sorry, on the solenoid driver board. I believe, if I remember the circuit correctly, one of these big, larger capacitor is the filter capacitor for our unregulated 12 on the Squawk and Talk. I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is. All right, and then we've got one more, 1 microfarad up here. Sorry that the camera angles are a little awkward here, but I gotta do what I gotta do. Where is this one? This one again is 1, 2, 3. It's 4 up from that patch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I lost my grip. No, oh, it still came out. Okay, good. And it didn't take out a fillet this time. Yay. I definitely can see the argument for having like a rotating board holder guy in this position. So I don't need 8,000 hands while I'm doing this kind of work, but you know, without any pain, can there be pleasure? This thing's starting to get nasty. I need to clean it out. It's spewing. Mike McKenna put a known good board in and it works. Oof. Okay, well, I'm sorry, since I can't scroll up, when you are power cycling your game to get the Squawk and Talk to boot, I mean, are you getting different blink codes every time? So, you know, sometimes you might get all 5 blinks, which is a properly booting up Squawk and Talk, and then maybe the next time you'll only get 2 or 3 blinks. Have you looked into that? Or is it successfully booting but not actually working or running the program? Steady green most of the time. Steady green. Well, I mean, again, and I don't want to sound like I'm, you know, just shoving you off somewhere else, but I would recommend taking a look at the PinWiki article on the Squawk and Talk. It's very informative. There's a lot of good information and ways to troubleshoot. Again, when I turned this thing on, we had nothing on that LED. I yanked the board out and I decided, well, let's measure voltages before we do this, and I had a steady green LED at that point. What I understand is that a steady green LED, I mean, it can be a lot of things, but in the experience I've had sitting down with again, my mentor, Chris, that generally means you have a non-working chip on the board. And we're talking like a processor or RAM or ROM or something like that. So, but you said you've also put in known good working chips. Huh. Don't you love soundboards? Isn't that fun? Okay, I'm doing that wrong. Okay. I was heating up the wrong lead. It is this one. There it goes. There it goes. All right. I think we got all of the 1 microfarad capacitors now. Wait, nope. Ooh. Good catch. Okay. You gotta be careful. This is a 2. The other one is right over here. I'm going to confirm that in the manual. I'm pretty sure this is the one I yanked out. You gotta catch yourself on those sorts of things. At the end of the day, if I installed a 1 in place of a 2, this board would probably still work. I don't know. I don't want to find out, but don't make those sorts of mistakes, because sometimes if you do put the wrong, a lot of times if you do put the wrong capacitor in place, you will cause a lot of issue. Be vigilant. C36 is a 2 microfarad capacitor. Let's double check the manual. Hopefully it comes out pretty quick. C34, C25. C36, 2 microfarad. Okay. You know what? Yeah, sockets is a good place to go to next. I mean, if you really have, if you really have expunged all other, expunged probably isn't the right word. If you have gone through every other alley, sockets might be the next place to go to. I remember reading a thread that it was either Bill Disney or Chris Heibler. It was either on RGP or maybe it was on Facebook. I don't know. It's fun when the really smart people start talking to each other because you learn a lot. Anyways, he was explaining that these Robert Newley sockets aren't infallible. They can have problems. I would say start with like I would, in my opinion, which again is not expert, I would probably start with replacing the processor, the RAM sockets first, and then just go one by one. I mean, if you want to sit down and shotgun the whole thing, I don't think you're that insane, because I mean, you're just prolonging the life of the board, but I would start there. But yeah, sockets are absolutely a possibility. These sockets don't have the notoriety of being really crappy like the Scambi ones do, or the orange ones that Bally used on a lot of the really early computers, but yeah, the sockets can go bad. There she goes. Almost done here. Okay. Okay. A lot of solder came out with that one, so I'm going to add a little bit of fresh solder into that hole. Keep that one nice and warm. It's a big trace. There it goes. Okay, and that is our final 1 microfarad capacitor. Positive is to the left. Just for giggles, check your reset line. Yeah, it's probably best to send it to Clive. I might actually be going to visit Clive next week. I'm very excited. That guy is insanely talented. But yeah, checking reset, I think the only reason I kind of discounted checking reset is because he did say he has swapped known good chips in, but I guess, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, for giggles, that would be good. If you have a logic probe, or oscilloscope or logic probe, that would be a good thing to check for giggles. Both of these capacitors are of the same value. 330s at 50. I can probably pull this one out with my finger because it's kind of long. There it goes. There it goes. I'm excited to see Jack Danger's pinball game get played at Pinball Expo. That's really cool, man. It's neat that he went through with that, made his own game. It's pretty exciting. It looks fun. Emoto said she hasn't played it yet because she had so much to do. Let's get those 330s in. Both of them have their polarity facing the same direction. So positive is going to face my right. I didn't bend those very nicely. They look amateurish, but oh well. I do want to try to get this back in the game before I decide to hit end stream. Two, three, four. I wonder if Jack's going to bring his Jurassic Park game to MGC. Then I'll get to play it. Come on, Stern. Bring it over.
It's not held low. I'm glad you guys are working on this.
All right, and last but not least, the big 4700 microfarad big boy. I'm going to quickly,
What time is it?
kind of on track. I'm gonna run and hit the header pins, especially the end ones. None of them are cracked, but I'm still going to hit the end ones and reflow some fresh solder in there, or flow some fresh solder in there. And we'll see if we have a booting Squawk and Talk. If not, I get to do some troubleshooting, some real troubleshooting, but that will be later. We also get to see if I put any of these in backwards. I'm pretty sure I didn't, but we will watch them explode if they did. And then I'll be really mad, but as of my own doing. I will quickly give it a glance over before I'm done. It is messy work to clean up capacitor goo on a circuit board. And if we can avoid it, we will. Which we can by not talking and paying attention to where we're soldering things at. Okay, good, 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 good. That's where the damage is. I'm gonna slap myself on the back of the hand for that. Good, 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 Good. 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 Okay. I think I said good a lot, and I think we're good. Let's see the chat here real quick. Y'all are desk saving. Colin Baxter wants me to drink my water. That's a lot of caps. Yes, there are a lot of caps here. You got, with Bally games, you definitely need to be good at replacing header pins. So the last like 5 pins here are not, or the last couple aren't used. I think these are tied to similar places, but anyways, I'll do these guys. Bally games, you definitely have to get good at replacing pins. The evil little .100 ones, I hate doing them. Even though I've been doing, as long as I've been doing this, I still using crimpers, whether they're the really fancy mechanical crimpers that Colin Baxter sent me, which I haven't used on camera yet, but I have used on service calls. They're pretty handy. Or my regular, you know, handy dandy crimpers that I've had forever. I still always pinch my finger. I always end up losing just like a little bit of finger skin. What we're doing here, again, is we're just reflowing solder. None of these are particularly cracked, but it's just good practice. On some of the end ones, I've removed the old solder and I'm flowing in fresh, new, shiny solder. These two are important because these are what actually output sound. I'll just get those toasty in. Add just a teeny bit. Okay. We're done. I rushed, but we did it. We have new capacitors on said Squawk and Talk board. There was carnage. I created death and evil and bad, and I'm embarrassed, but we did it. But we fixed it. And thank you for being kind and reassuring me that that was useful and not to kick myself too hard. We have a patch wire. Let's go plug this sucker in. Let's see what happens. So before we had a locked on LED. From what I understand and gather, a locked on LED means the processor isn't finding program, etc. It could be many things. But now that we have refreshed and given it a fresh dose of capacitance, let's see what we get. Sorry, I forgot the camera. Whee! Yeah, zzz, pop. It might happen, but I double checked it, so it shouldn't. Try it, try it. Yes, sir. Put that in. Put this guy in. Whoops. Almost pulled my soldering iron off the table. I'm going to get down here, turn the game on. I'm going to watch that LED, and you guys probably will be too. All right, it is steady locked on. That means something. We're going to need to potentially start swapping in known good chips. I'm going to have to ensure that everything is going where it needs to. I mean, everything looked good. Giggles. I didn't take the RAM out. But we can fix it. I suppose, I don't know, I can pin wiki it while I'm chatting with you guys. Let's take a look-see and see what the smart people say we might have going on with a solid locked-on LED. Unfortunately, that is where the downside of the diagnostic LED comes in, is that it will tell you a lot of things if everything is working. If you have an issue where the processor can't boot up the program, then it really doesn't tell you much, and you're stuck at a basic stage. Washing my hands, hold on. All right, getting all that lead nastiness off my hands, so I'm not too afraid to touch my face. I wouldn't count that as a failure. You know, nothing changed after doing all that work, but that work needs to be done anyways. So it's not like we wasted our time. For the last couple minutes, I will change the camera over. Lick my fingers. I have to click that button. Ta-da! Wow, my hair's getting long again. I gotta get a haircut. Sorry I left. What's going on? We have a Squawk and Talk that's still not booting up. We replaced all the capacitors. None of them are backwards. None of them exploded. But we've got a game that a computer that's still not booting. I'm gonna look at my phone here, really quick. Let's see. This might take a little bit more reading, but let's see what people might say. The nice thing about this board is you can power it up on a bench if you've got like a 5 and a 12 volt power supply. So most video games, like linear power, whatchamacallit, the little box power supplies will do that. So you don't have to keep going in and out of the game. A locked-on LED, minimizing chips needed to boot. As mentioned above, there are LED blink codes when used when passing specific chip tests during the boot up process. However, the Squawk and Talk board, similar to the -17-35 MPUs, and can end up with the dreaded locked-on LED. The end result is the board is not proceeding through the boot process. On the plus side, battery damage is less common, blah, blah, blah. For starters, it would be best to reduce the amount of chips installed on the Squawk and Talk to try to get it to boot. At minimum, only the following factory socketed chips are needed to achieve some signs of life, which would be past the locked-on LED. Having only these chips installed will allow the board to complete its boot up process. However, chips can be installed in a systematic method to get it to boot. Yeah, okay. To achieve the flicker from the diagnostic LED on the board, U1, either a 6808 or 6802, which is a processor, and U11, the 6820 or 6821, which is a PIA, and the U5 ROM. Apparently, so the boot up instructions are located on U5. So basically, when the board boots up, it resets. The first thing the processor is trying to do is access the instructions, how to boot up on U5. Where was I? Make certain the jumper settings are correct for U1 and U5. I'm going to assume that they're correct because this is the Squawk and Talk that came in this board game from the factory. Known working 6821 PIA can be used. So I could use one of the PIAs in the computer. I have some PIAs I could yank out. This will be next time. Likewise, the 6820 from the Squawk and Talk may be installed into an MPU board to test it. So that's the first step. When you run into problems with circuit board or computers specifically, you do want to you do the basics, make sure voltage is there, you make sure it's getting where it needs to go, and then you start replacing socketed chips. That is how we can eliminate, or just have a process of elimination to figure out what is wrong. You know, I probably will systematically check these because 6821s are kind of rare. I don't want to just start, throwing those around. But, maybe I'll start by replacing the processor, and then we'll replace the PIA. I'll make sure that U5 is good. I can go test that and make sure it has what it needs on it, or burn a new one. But I think we'll start with the processor and the PIA. Anywho. Are you going to Expo or MGC? I am not going to Expo, but I am going to MGC. So if you are there, come find me. I'll probably have no voice, and I'll be talking a lot all weekend, and it'll be fun. Man, I'm really, really tempted to just sit here and start swapping stuff out, but I do need to go. I've got a busy night. I have to go back to the arcade and start fixing stuff. I did remove the processor. I didn't remove this PIA. I'm pressing on it just a little bit. U5 is this prom here. Come on, do something. If I just sit here looking at it, you'll do something, right? No, can't get that lucky. Anyways, we know where to start next. This would absolutely be a lot easier if we were doing this on the bench. What's rare? 6821s are just, you can't get new ones anymore, so they're, I don't know. I just kind of try to hoard the good ones, you know. Any flicker? No flicker, just a locked on LED. So from what I gather and understand, that just means the processor cannot access the boot instructions. So we will try swapping the 6802 or 6808. What's in there? It's a 6808. So we'll swap the 6808, see if that changes anything. Then we will swap the 6821, see if that changes anything. And then we will replace U5, one of the ROMs on the board, and see what happens. So the SAD chip on the Say It Again board is rare. Yes. Yeah, flicker is the reset line. I mean, I could... NTE still makes 6821s. If they did, I feel like... Huh. Really? That would be fun. Well, we got something done. That is a process. Again, I was talking, so it took 2 times as long, and that's definitely not the easiest board to put new capacitors on, but you know, anybody who has a Squawk and Talk, that's one thing you're going to want to start with. They sound better. It will eliminate issues. A lot of times, the issues that replacing capacitors will solve are faint sounds or something like that. Maybe your talk is louder than your squawk, or vice versa. Maybe they both sound pretty dull. That is definitely the sign of an electrolytic capacitor not doing its job as good as it was 40 years ago. The other thing on these games, definitely the pots can also go bad. 1K linear pots. You can just jumper those things. I think the pots on this just will mix the voice and the sound at different levels, but you know, I have seen people in desperation just jumper them and then run with the front volume control, which also works. .6821s are available. Oh yeah, 6821Ps. Oh, okay. I wonder where we get our 6821s from. I should take a look. The problem is just like, I just don't like being willy-nilly with this stuff. I like to mark things good. Like I've got like a gold paint pen that I'll pop like a little dot on some of the chips that I save just to make sure they're good. When we used to strip Bally MPUs, when we would replace them with Alltech Ultimate boards, we would you know, power up the MPU on the bench and just test chips all day long, making sure we save the good ones or not, just because, you know, there will be a point where this stuff just isn't available anymore. Sad, but... All right, I'm wrong. Sorry. I don't like giving out wrong information, but... You know what? It doesn't matter. Everyone should just think that everything is rare as hen's teeth and treat it that way, because then we don't have willy-nilly loss and destruction of, you know, outdated electronics. It always just makes me wonder, like, how many people have thrown away perfectly good ASIC chips on WPC computers, you know, when they would buy one fully populated. It's like, well, I don't need this. Those might be coming back someday. I mean, I can still get them from some places, but, you know, the price on those things have just gone through the roof because there was a finite supply, you know? So, anywho, we made a mistake. We fixed that mistake. We successfully installed new capacitors, and we successfully still have the exact same issue. This is not a defeat. This is just a step. I'm trying to sound inspirational, but you know, again, yeah, Daniel said, you need more time to do this. Yes, I do. If I did have more time, we'd sit down and swap them out. But again, I don't want to rush this stuff. So I appreciate all of you guys coming here and, you know, joining me for this. Obi's inspired. Yay. 7408s are rare. Yes. Yeah, it's been a problem trying to keep some of that stuff in stock on our store. You know, trying to find these things, it's like, A, it's difficult, and B, when you do find these things, it's not uncommon that they're counterfeit. Or, you know, sometimes, a lot of times you'll get electronics from China, right? And it's not because they're bad or whatever, but, you know, think about it, like in Taiwan or whatever, where they're building a lot of these chips, you know, they test them, and the good ones get put in the line and they go out, and, you know, you'd hope the bad ones would be destroyed. I definitely think that there could be a instance or an occurrence where some of these, you know, warehouses are finding maybe some undestroyed chips, some undestroyed bad ones, and they're being sold as good. Now, just because they're rare. Not as good, but they're being sold. It's probably not likely that someone's going to rip off a 6808 processor. It's way more likely that someone's going to rip off a, you know, an audio chip or something like that. But you know, it is a constant struggle, you know, and it always makes me upset when, you know, we might sell a chip and then customer service gets a call and it's like, hey, this one doesn't work. Our customer said these are bad, and then, you know, I bust out all these chips and I go put them into test jig and try to test them all, and like out of the 50 I tested, 10 of them are good. And that's what makes me think that, you know, some of these places selling electronics might be finding people that are finding bins of previously, you know, bad or rejected chips. So, anywho, thanks for joining me. I'm gonna find someone to raid. My voice hurts. I've been talking too much. I miss Emoto. I like it when she's here to counteract me. Oh, look, you're getting another view now. eBay's full of fakes. Aw. Thanks, Emoto. Thanks, everybody. That was fun. I guess next week we might be at MGC. Emoto, even though we're going next weekend, I still have no idea when we're going. I'm not sure what the plan is. So we might be streaming on Thursday from MGC, maybe like a walkthrough. Let's see. I need to go to Twitch. Oh, and just because it makes me sad. Someone I've met before and an incredibly wonderful asset to our community, unfortunately passed away recently. Ken Layton lived in Pacific Northwest. He was very active at those shows, Northwest Pinball Arcade Show, and on, you know, the West Coast local groups. That guy was a video game wizard. It was always amazing to see someone ask a question about a monitor, and he would jump in and be like, this. And yeah. Yeah, Ken Layton passed away. It's very sad. Pour one out for the homie. We'll stream the setup like it's Southern Fried. Okay, cool. Thanks, Emoto. So, anyways, it's sad to lose another great asset, you know. And that's why it has to be for people like you and me and everyone else in this chat who have a passion to keep these games working. Because if we don't, it's going to die with us, you know? I need to find an understudy for people to come and learn from me and others, and so I'm not the last generation that understands this stuff. All right, we're going to raid Ice-Doo because he was here, and he's awesome, and he's playing Big Lebowski, so how do you do this? Skidoo. Is it cap sensitive? I don't think so. Don't let pinball die. Yes. Now I'm nervous to work on mine. I'm a 3 at best, but got to attempt caps. You can do it. Just do it slow and carefully. Don't make mistakes like I did. I was rushing and talking. I'm glad that I made a mistake so I could show that it is not impossible to fix things, but at the same time, we still have an unworking board. It is unrelated. The thing that I made a problem with is not, you know, related to why it's not booting up, but we'll figure it out soon. Okay, I think I did it. Yay, raid. Okay, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate everyone stopping by every week. You bring me joy. This brings me joy. And thanks for being here. I learned a lot from some of y'all. Now that I can see my screen, I want to thank a new viewer, Diggerate Ohm. Thanks for joining and talking and giving us your knowledge. So, anywho, goodbye, everybody.